All right, team, I believe I have figured it out. Welcome to Monday's class from the comfort of my beautiful office. Look at it. It's a sweet pillow with a skull. A story I'm working on. Another story I'm working on. I can feel myself coming down with something. Probably cold, but we're going to be safe. And so I'm just going to say right now that class for Monday is going to be virtual. I honestly have wanted to do it virtually just to test it out for quite a while now anyway. So I think that this works. I've got the lesson prepared anyway. We're going to deliver it. And you're going to stream and you're going to do the attendance exercise just like you've been doing. So hopefully it should be relatively straightforward. This week we're going to be talking about literary devices. And the device that I've chosen for today is point of view. And so I brought in a special poem about point of view. And I've also asked you to do a reading for this week, which is Jennifer Egan's phenomenal story, Out of Body, which if you haven't read it yet, I'm only going to read the first couple paragraphs of it here, so that's okay. I tried to schedule this live stream for later, but I have a weird sense that I'm actually streaming live to the world right now. I literally am not 100% sure, but we'll see how it goes. So, first off, let's do the poem. This is by a poet named Suji Kwak Kim, and it is called Monologue for an Onion. It is from the perspective of an onion to you. So, monologue. I mean nothing, but this has not kept you from peeling away my body, layer by layer, the tears clouding your eyes as the table fills with husks, cut flesh, all the debris of pursuit. Poor deluded human, you seek my heart. Hunt all you want. Beneath each skin of mine lies another skin. I am pure onion, pure union of outside and in, surface and secret core. Look at you, chopping and weeping. Idiot. Is this the way you go through life, your mind a stopless knife driven by your fantasy of truth, of lasting union, slashing away skin after skin from things? Are ruin and tears your only signs of progress? Enough is enough. You must not grieve that the world is glimpsed through veils. How else can it be seen? How would you rip away the veil of your eye, the veil that you are, you who want to grasp at the heart of things, hungry to know where meaning lies? Taste what you hold in your hands. Onion juice, yellow peels, my stinging shreds. You are the one in pieces. Whatever you meant to love, in meaning to, you changed yourself. You are not who you are. Your soul cut moment to moment by a blade of fresh desire, the ground sown with abandoned skins, and at your innermost circle, what? A core that is not one. Poor fool, you are divided at the heart, lost in its maze of chambers, blood, and love. A heart that will one day beat you to death. I love this poem. I love this poem so much. I think, okay, there we go. My screen's being really weird. I love this poem so much. And I bring it in today because for me, it was one of the first pieces at all that really rattled my cage with regard to this exact problem, which is everyone at some point in their life kind of has to make peace with the fact that they are the only means by which they will ever encounter the world. I'm the only way that I'm ever going to interact with the world. And there are limits to that. And in some ways you could see it as a problem. I cannot escape myself, right? I cannot rip away the veil that I am. And so I think for point of view, it's really important to talk about this lens of self, which is part of why I also connected it to Friday's class and put it right after Friday's class, which is you are always the one in nature. So point of view is a device that we play with in fiction specifically because of this problem. This problem, I think, of being locked in one body. And we have learned that speaking in third person versus first versus second can yield different or interesting effects in a piece of writing. Like in Jennifer Egan's wonderful short story, Out of Body, the first couple paragraphs of which I'm going to read right now. So this is just the opening. So if you haven't read it yet and you're just doing the lesson for the lesson, that's okay. You should still read it. But here's the very beginning. So you get a sense of what second person is. Your friends are all pretending to be all kinds of stuff, and your special job is to call them on it. Drew says he's going to run straight for law school. After practicing for a while, he'll run for state senator, and then U.S. senator, and then eventually president. He says he lays all this out in the way you would say, well, after modern Chinese painting class, I'm going to go to the gym and then work in Bob's Hall until dinner. As if you made plans anymore, which you don't. If you were even in school anymore, which you are not, although that's supposed to be temporary. You look at Drew through layers of hash smoke floating in the sun. He's leaning back on the futon couch, his arm around Sasha. He's got a big, hey, come on in kind of face and a head of dark hair, and he's built, not with weight room muscle like yours, but in a basic animal way that must come from all that swimming that he does. Just don't try and say you didn't inhale, you tell him. And everyone laughs, except for Bix, who's at the computer, and you feel like a fun guy for maybe half a second until it occurs to you that they probably only laugh because they could see that you were trying to be funny, and they're afraid that you will jump out the window onto East 7th Street if you fail at even something so small. All right, that's a good place to pause. I lost my place. Hold on. Okay, there we go. In this story, I think we can see pretty quickly how the second person does something pretty unique and specific. It emulates this spooky experience, especially over the course of the story. It emulates the spooky experience of having trouble occupying oneself, of floating just above oneself, of observing oneself as one acts, and of sometimes being confused or even disturbed by one's actions. And because second person has this effect of creating a disconnect between the narrator and their world, the narrator's not occupying his own self. He's saying you. It offloads some of the narrator's agency onto the reader, leaving the reader feeling somewhat implicated. Because every time the narrator does something, we, in a way, are addressed by second person, right? That's a crazy trick. And we don't see second person very often. So I want to talk for a minute now. Using that as a base, I want to talk about point of view in general as best as I can explain it. I want to check the chat first, though. I see one person watching. Yo, if you are here, put your name in the chat. I'm super curious. So let's talk about point of view. Here is how point of view works as best as I have figured it out. Of veils, of distance or layers or lenses between our experience of standing in this room. There is the room itself, and all of those things are different things. And my body is built to manage those schisms and differences and distances as best as it can, but it is not perfect. So let's talk about those layers in relation to the reader for a moment. So in a text with a first person narrator, where somebody says, I did this, I went to the store, I think about blah, 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 blah. The reader experiences the character first and the world second. What I mean is that there is a world in the story, but no matter what else the book tries to do, that world can only come at us through a certain lens, that is the voice and mind of the character who is narrating. This emulates our experience, right? I cannot leave my experience. In a first person book, we cannot leave that character's experience. So when you write in fictional first person, the project is, among other things, to ask yourself at every avenue, how does this character see the world? And you have to find points where your perspective and your narrator's perspective come into some kind of alignment or an interesting schism so that you can work with that character's mind. Now, in a third person story, when the narrator is not a character, the relationship is slightly different. Instead, we watch the characters as if in a movie, through the lens of the narrator, which becomes like a camera. And we are left kind of guessing at the mood and tone and thoughts of all of the characters. So to summarize, in first person, the character is in the foreground and the world is kind of refracted through them. In third person, the world is foregrounded and the characters are kind of refracted through the world. Now, in omniscient third person, which is the other one we've got to talk about, an author kind of tries to have their cake and eat it too, and reveal to you the inner workings of a character or characters while also creating this sense of third person objectivity. This can be a tough one to pin down, because in a sense, the author is making an attempt to collapse these layers of distance that I'm talking about, to do away with them, and give the reader the sense that both of these things are happening at once. In omniscient third, I think What we are left sorting through often is what decisions the author made about what thoughts and feelings to show us and which ones to not. We learn through omission what the story is really about, because an omniscient third, right, it can't give us every thought of every character and everything that's happening in the world, right? In fact, really, it only gives us the tiniest slice of what's happening in that world, that whole world. And so if we think about it from that perspective, we can begin to understand why was the author so choosy about these details. So this one, I think, third person omniscient, ends up foregrounding the author more than the others for these reasons, because we're left trying to suss out what is the book's theme or focus based on what the author tends to show us and what the author tends to kind of spackle over. So with all this in mind, we're going to do some writing. First, I want you to think back to something you did in your past that made someone else react poorly to you or think poorly of you. We all have these moments, but summon up a moment in which you were perceived poorly by another person. And maybe the situation was more complex than that person understood, or maybe you truly did act in a way where their judgment was warranted. Either one, doesn't matter. I want you to write about that moment and write the narrative from your perspective. But I want you to try and maintain this second person technique that Jennifer Egan does, as in, you will still be you and you'll still be writing from yourself, but you should address yourself as you. So if in your story, if in your narrative, in your memory, you're sitting on a park bench, you would write as if you were speaking to yourself. You are sitting on a park bench, okay? You could think of it like do everything the same, but swap out the word I for the word you. So certain details involving mood are going to become really important for this. How were you feeling leading up to this moment? How did you feel during and after? And we're going to do this for 6 minutes. Siri, timer, 6 minutes. Where'd my timer go? There it is. I'm just realizing as I do this that I have literally never made an attempt to write fiction with this point of view. And as I'm doing it, I super want to. About a minute and a half left. $30 seconds. I paused the timer. I'm finishing my sentence. Okay. So you've got, I want you to write from the perspective, we're going to jump points of view now. And I want you to write the same moment. I want you to start from the perspective of this other person, the one who judged you during this moment. But now I want you to write in first person, as if you are that person. Try to really get inside their head. Try to consider where their body was positioned, how you can set the scene and locate them, and also try to consider all of what they might have been thinking or feeling that contributed to the way they reacted to you. Also, while recognizing, of course, that you can't completely do this and that the project is inherently flawed. That's part of the fun, right? And we're going to do this for another 6 minutes. I see names in the chat. I'm curious about who's here. Just under a minute left. Weird. To go back to that moment, I mean, and that's less. I think I would add at least another minute to all of these because I find I'm wondering, honestly, I say this because I'm wondering if this has been true for you as well. But I find that for both of these, I really wish I had a little bit more time, and that's not usually the case. Usually, I'm pretty good at ballparking how long these should take, or like adding or subtracting time as needed. But without you here in front of me, I feel sort of stuck to the way. So this last one we're going to do is going to go a little bit longer, which I planned for. And we're going to try to enlarge this moment just a little bit. Now, we're going to jump into third person plural, a type of third person omniscient. You're going to occupy both minds, yours and this other person's. The only pronoun you are to address yourself or this other person as is we. No more I and no more you. Your past self and this past other person are one entity now. Imagine yourself locked into this we perspective during this moment of disagreement. How does that limit what you can say? How does it dictate what must get said? In what direction does it leave you sort of blindly groping? And we're going to try to do this for a little bit longer. Go. I mean, if you got to start general, if you got to start out really general, start out really general. I just wrote down, we are two people in a room. Sometimes that's where you got to go. It reminds me of that joke, and then I'm going to let you write it. It reminds me of that old joke. What did the lawyer say to the other lawyer? We are both lawyers. I'm going to stop. I keep wanting to go like one of us feels this way, the one of us feels this way, and like highlight the difference again. I'm getting interesting stuff out of it though. About a minute and a half left. Ooh. All right, you may stop. That was interesting for me. I found that during this last section, I found that one thing that was interesting was, we picked a moment where you were perceived poorly, and that can be hard. It can be hard to go back to. It can be uncomfortable to go back to. And I think it's inherently uncomfortable to go back to. And I found that I had a much easier time. I think one of the reasons I needed extra time was because I found myself describing the room a lot from both perspectives. And then, I would notice that like 4 minutes had gone by and I'd be like, shit, like I haven't talked enough about the actual story. But I had this unifying, right? It's a we. But it was really interesting. Like sometimes I was reaching really for what to say, and I found myself saying stuff like, "We are both people." We both hold our embarrassments very close, and then occasionally, heat them up in the microwave and eat them again. We both listen to the same rhythms. We both are looking at the tree outside. That was a really interesting exercise, and it found I was kind of hoping maybe that I would be able to get into the specifics of the moment a little more with this we thing, but I was not able to. But I also think that it worked, at least for me in this instance, because it was a very unifying exercise in that way. It highlighted just like the base level humanity of us both. And that was really effective. This is normally the time when we all like do the discussion thing. Obviously, we're not going to do that today because I'm probably, if you're watching this on Monday, I'm probably in, or anytime over the weekend, I'm in like a NyQuil haze, I'm sure. So we're going to end a little bit early today, but keep your eyes on my courses and keep your eyes on the email. I'm going to send out at some point an announcement that alerts you to the presence of this very same video. But I'm also going to send another one that will tell you whether or not I'm feeling better by Wednesday, and whether or not we're going to go online